Welcome to Biz Story Talks. Biz Story is a community where like-minded freelancers, solopreneurs, and creatives come together to share, learn, and grow. We're all about supporting each other and building up the skills and connections we need to take our businesses to the next level. Tonight, I am thrilled to have Amy Merithew with us. Amy is the Director of Client Partnerships at Wilkins Media, a leader in out-of-home advertising. If you've ever wondered how to create billboards that stop people in their tracks, hopefully not on the expressway, then this is the chat for you. Amy's here to share her top billboard do's and don'ts. So get ready for some golden advice you can use to elevate your brand visibility. Feel free to drop your questions and comments during the talk. We'll answer as many as we can during the Q&A at the end. Amy, welcome. Tell us a bit more about your work at Wilkins Media and what got you into the world of out-of-home advertising.
Thank you, Casey. My name, as you've mentioned, is Amy Merithew, and I am a 20-plus year veteran in the advertising community, focused in the Metro Detroit area, and my specialty has been out of home or billboard advertising and so much more for the last several years. And I've been with Wilkins, and we, as Wilkins, is an out-of-home out-of-home buying specialist. We typically work with agencies and clients direct to buy, place, and activate out-of-home campaigns locally, nationally, and even across the globe. So I'm excited to share with you a little bit more about the creative, because out-of-home can be very, very effective if done right. And I know you have a large audience of creative-minded people, and it's the saddest thing to me to see all the time and effort going into a billboard display or something else, and it just falls flat because there's too much on it or any of those things. So, are you ready for me to share with you a few of those tips?
Absolutely. Dive in. I'm excited. I know
All right.
as a designer, I've personally worked on billboards before, and it's a constant struggle of what you can and can't put on there. So I'm excited to hear what you have to say.
Absolutely. So I'll get right into it. So the best practices or the tenets of good out-of-home creative is that you want to have good contrast. Contrast is king. Simplicity, imagery has to be on point, and you have to have some awareness of the context or the environment that you're going to have the ad. The big players all do this very well. If you think about McDonald's or the big beer companies like Coors or Busch or Labatt even is a big one in the Detroit area that we see. Coca-Cola and all those big names that you can think of. But it's not just for big players. I mean, there's a lot of billboard creative that is done on the local level. But the big thing for us is that we like to really send through the message that the 6-second rule is very important. The average driver or passerby has about 6 to 8 seconds to consume the ad on a billboard. And you're more likely to reach the passenger side than you are even the driver. And the driver, not that you aren't likely to catch them, but they have less time or less attention devoted to billboards because they're driving, as it should be. So that means that there's some benchmarks that we like to really drive home in the industry. 7 words or less is more. 3 visual points of interest is really key. Headline, logo, image, that's it. So like Carvana, this image here I have on the screen does a really good job. They have 7 words in their headline. They have their logo that's really prominent, and they have a image that's relatable and it makes sense to people who know what Carvana is. So even if you don't consume all of the board, it still makes sense. It's relevant. So good, simple creative is more effective, and the audience will have better recall. So the biggest mistakes we see is that people will approach a billboard the same way that they do a print ad or even a brochure, or they want to say something that is, informative. That's not really the place for billboards. Think of it more of like a flashcard. The benefit that a lot of the larger brands might have is that their logo is so already recognizable, so they might not have to put a big logo on there. But so if you start with this, it's a real brand builder. So here's another example of contrast. So if you have yellow on yellow, and I grabbed this old billboard image of a YP campaign, it has yellow font on a yellow grade background. And if you're squinting at it, you cannot see the headline. You don't know what it's saying. So you're not going to have audience recall on a copy like that, even though what I always say, in the boardroom, that copy looks great and it's not too busy and there's really nice design elements that are going on there. And it probably reads well in a magazine, but it's not good on a billboard.
No.
Another thing I always like to tell people is that, you dress in black when you want to look thinner. Black makes everything look thinner. So if you're a designer and you have a black background and you have lots of contrast, just know that even those light fonts on the front where there's contrast, if it's a black background, they're going to look thinner. And the black font on a light background is going to look thinner than it actually is if it were something different, like a bold red or a bold green. So, and then if you're doing digital billboards, we recommend that you stay away from white because we really can't create white in light. So here's some examples of some good contrast billboards. Locally, the Jumana Carews attorney does a really great job. She has white copy on a red background and her image right prominent. Everybody knows who she is. Dunkin' Donuts does a great job of, really making sure their copy is simple. Here's some examples of things that are not so simple. So, and these are old and they're not, I just grabbed them off the mainstream web, but there's on the bottom right of the screen, if you can see it, that's a restaurant. They want to tell you that they have 85 menu items. They have different kinds of style, Cajun, Creole, and they've got their hours on there and they've got the days that they're closed, but then they put a sticker on it to change it, to fix it. They have a directional, who knows what's going on there. It's just too much. And in this case, the logo, the brand is in a font that doesn't really work very well for billboards. So it's unfortunate because you don't want them to have to rebrand, but in this case, it would be better to use the logo in a smaller case and then reinforce the name of the restaurant in bold, blocky letters so that it's clear who is advertising. So just better to be simple. So then imagery is a big component. I already talked about like the Carvana one that had a car on the back of a flatbed tow truck. But if you use people, it's usually more relatable. It creates an emotional connection. Mother Waddles does a really good job here in the Metro Detroit area. With their Donate a Car campaign, they have an image of someone who you might imagine to be homeless or hungry. Butter Chardonnay does a really good job of showing, images of people enjoying themselves, winding down, so to speak. The Chick-fil-A campaign has a long storied history of using these embellished cows on their boards with this idea that they might be painting the billboard themselves and asking the community to eat more chicken instead of beef. It's a way to connect with the audience. So it's a really good way to think about how important your image is on the billboard. And then context in your environment is so important. It creates, relevant copy is going to connect with an audience very quickly. Like this copy in the right here, it says lake and bake. It would be weird if that copy was not near a lake, so you have to take that into consideration. You want to make sure that you relate to people. I love the brands that do a good job of, making a comment about a local sports team that's doing a good job, or if there's something that is going on that you can connect with the consumer in a certain environment in the market, and not just the people in the audience, the community that you're advertising in, but you also want to think about the location of the board. If it's a quick board that's only going to have a couple seconds to read, maybe you want to make it even more brief. Or if it's in a wooded area, if your copy aligns with something, like you can play off the trees in the area. That's a good idea. Those are kinds of things that you can do. Again, this copy on the lower right, McDonald's has a really they have a big advantage. They don't even have to show their whole logo, and you know who they are. They're the really ambassadors of branding their brand. So that specific red and yellow contrast, and then the directional is simple. It says on your right. So you immediately are connecting with the audience, and the consumer knows that if those arches made their mouth water and they want some French fries, all they have to do is look to the right. So it's really important to think about that kind of thing, and you'll get more engagement and recall with your audience. Mm-hmm. So in addition to that, you can get more creative. We love when embellishments and extensions are used in out of home. A lot of people don't realize how many ways you can kind of leverage your creative techniques on a billboard. This is an example of a mortgage company, Grow Financial, down in Florida, and they use this like puff material to kind of create an image of monsters that were coming off of the board, like cartoon monsters, to kind of go along with that Disney movie Monsters Inc. Really great. It gets a lot of engagement when you do something creative like that. People talk about it. You might get some extra play with some PR or doing some press releases. So it's really fun to see stuff like that. And this one's going to be hard for you to see because they took the picture so far away. But this is a Mike Morse copy, and it's just very simple. It says get Mike, or get more, get Mike. And it's Mike Morse's head, really big. But the reason I have it in this deck is because this board is on US 23, and it is visible literally for over a mile. And I mean, you just know that you're coming up on it. You might not even know what it says, but if you're from the area, you've seen his head and face so many times before. You don't have to think about what it is. So you just know that it's there. Now, would this board work in Iowa if he's not there? No, it won't. But it was really smart of him to have this kind of board in this area. And then also he has an extension on it so that it really angles in with the road and stands out just a little bit more. I love this. This was Panera did this a couple of years ago. The copy is fantastic on its own, but the steam that you see in the picture is really a smoke machine behind the billboard. So that during peak lunchtime, they would have that running, and it looked like a steaming hot bowl of soup up on that billboard. So smart, so creative. Yes. And then you can do some more things. This is a tailgating isn't worth it. And they use some extensions and embellishments to literally make the board look like it's crinkled up on itself, like a collision. This one is with a rocket launch off of the billboard, like the rocket looks like it's coming off the billboard. Perfect imagery to pair up with a Blue Origin and their recruiting campaigns. So billboards really do run the gamut of all the different kinds of campaigns that you might think to run. And so that's what I really wanted to share with you. So if you get anything out of this, it's 6 seconds is all an advertiser or an audience has to read a board, and your copy and recall with the audience engagement will all go up if you have effectively created a design that can be consumed in that little amount of time.
Yes, that like really that really hit it home for me whenever you had told me about that in our emails back and forth. That you only have 6 seconds to make an impact.
Right.
Like that was like, holy cow.
Yeah.
So I know, like, as a designer, and I've run into this issue of like everybody wants to shove as much as they can into their billboard. What do you tell those people, or are you on that end of things really?
I can every once in a while. I am. I don't do much about that these days. I'm much more a strategy and media placement advisor. That's my job. But it is also my job to be a good partner and advocate for your brand. And if I think that you're going to put something on a board that's just really missing the mark, I'll probably say something about it. Unfortunately, and I understand why, but a lot of creative folks don't really want that kind of feedback. They've spent so much time and effort, and they've got, as a creative designer, I understand this from having the little awareness that I do of how hard it is. But you spend a lot of thought that's not even something that you can see. There's a lot of behind the scenes work that goes into it. And you're thinking about why you're positioning things in such a level that most of the people are not going to get it. But you're also so more in tuned to the nuances of people and how they consume an ad or creative in general. So those little things are really important because they'll get to people subliminally. So that's the hard part. Nobody wants to hear that their baby is ugly. And a lot of times these ads are sometimes like having their own little baby. You feel so like connected to them. So I get it from that point. But there really is some huge background evidence to support how billboards, number one, a lot of folks discredit how effective they are, but they build brands. Just like you saw McDonald's didn't even have to use their whole logo. It's because they're the masters of brand, and they're up in every market across the country. Do they have to advertise on billboards? Maybe not, but that is a key component of their brand campaign, and they don't shy away from it. And automotive is the same kind of thing. You see it with the liquor and beer and all of those kinds of things too.
Oh, absolutely. How do you help brands figure out where their billboards should be?
So a lot of that comes from who their target audience is. We have a lot of analytics on the background with our auditing partner. The industry standard is to use Geopath. And so Geopath has, all of these locations across all platforms, their longitude and latitude, and what zip code they are. They pair that up with census data to kind of come up with some audience metrics. There's also real-time data with mobile traffic counts and things like that kind of give us a lot more data than we ever have had. We've kind of been blown away with the advances we've made in out of home. But usually an advertiser knows how they want to spend their budget, like how do they want to distribute this and what markets are important to them. Based on what markets are important to them, we then make a recommendation of where the inventory is, how it would best suit their target, and how it would fit into their budget.
Yeah.
So it really comes down to the target audience, market importance or weight, so they might be spending more in New York City than they are in Detroit, but you can kind of find the balance, and then the budget and what they've got to what their goals are. So that's what we look at when we're building out a campaign.
Absolutely. I always found it interesting. So I've worked in the cannabis industry now for a few years, designing billboards, and that's something that the CRA is very interested in, is like the viewership of those billboards. So I was always like really interested, like how do they actually figure that out? Who's actually looking at these boards as they're going down the road?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a lot more information now with mobile data, and but prior to having mobile data and knowing like literally audiences in the same way that you do with digital ads, it was really based on the demographics of a market and the zip code information based on census data. But roadside is a lot different than like digital, because you're getting in-market impressions as well as pass-through out-of-market impressions. You're also getting a frequency that you wouldn't normally get even like on a website or in an app or anything like that, because it's consistent to like people's traffic patterns on a weekly basis. So we do our impressions based on a week, because there's a commuter pattern, there's, the daily pattern of school and things like that. And then that offers you an understanding of what that frequency might look like too. So the average person that drives to and from on the Southfield Freeway for work 5 days a week is going to see that ad 5 days a week, so it's different. So that's only one person, but there's 5 times frequency.
Yeah, absolutely. Found that data behind that all really interesting. And kind of on that kind of thread, what do you think is the best way, or how maybe how have you found, or what have you seen is the best way to measure the success of a billboard campaign? Like how do people track the ROI on that sort of?
Yeah, well, so it's not a click-through campaign, so it's very different than that. But it is a brand activator, and recall is really important. When you have a benchmark for your traffic to a website, depending on what your call to action is on your billboard, and a call to action is just your logo, especially nowadays with it's so easy to look up a location, a restaurant, a dispensary or whatever, just on name. You don't have to have, a lot more information. You certainly don't want to put a phone number on a billboard anymore. Nobody is going to remember that. Please don't do it. You probably don't need to put a website unless it's really easy to remember, or you have just really bad SEM. Now, that is, and a billboard's only going to do so much. So if you've got good SEM and you've got a solid creative, they'll go online and interact with you. Especially, that's how the call to action works with a billboard. So you can track traffic to your billboard if that's your call to action, to before and after a campaign. And typically that's the biggest, easiest way to track or see if there's activation. Now, if it's something that you really want to test, you can certainly test it with a promotion that's specific only to billboards. I've seen copy that has said, mention this billboard for whatever, a
Oh,
giveaway. It's kind of tricky to do that with a really simple layout, but it is something that can be done. So,
yeah.
yeah.
Probably definitely more in a local, like a not on a highway so much, but probably more of a local road or something like
Right.
that. Yeah.
Yes, that's where it would be. There's different kinds of boards. There's the billboard that's on the highway when you're going 75 miles an hour, and then there's boards that are at a stop sign, and those boards might have a little bit more time to read. And that's all about taking the context and environment into consideration.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, cool. All right. So let's see here. Um, do you have any examples of maybe like there was like a really unconventional idea that really uh, was really successful in your experience?
Let me see, an unconventional idea.
Yeah.
Let's, if I have, let me see if I have something. Well, I mean, I would go back to the Panera idea. I mean, who'd have thought to put a smoke machine on the back, right?
That was so
Um,
cool.
I love some of the anima or the 3D elements that are coming out on digital screens. They're working, you can see some pretty cool creative on there. Or if you look up anamorphic copy, that is amazing what digital design can do and like trick the eye into thinking that something is coming off of a billboard. Or, if you think of Times Square or some of those really cool formats where you can do stuff like that. Now, you can't do that on a billboard on the highway because most of the imagery is static.
Mm-hmm.
But I've seen some pretty fun things come through with those type of activations. Um, the other one that really always sticks out to me is if you can be creative and have like multiple boards in sequence. If you can
Yeah.
play off of those are really great. Sam Bernstein had one on 96 not too long ago, and he had a different message. I love like the advertisers that like I said, make it relevant to the community. Like the Lions are easy to get on board with the bandwagon right now, right?
Mhm.
So
Oh,
we're
yeah.
all Lions fans all of a sudden. But you know, so those are the kinds of things I think are unique. If you can relate it to something else that you're doing, whether you have like a experiential thing, or if you've got, so you use the billboard as like anchors to a campaign, and then you're in an event that you're doing something, and if you have on the billboard, check us out at booth 24, and then you are at booth 24 and the imagery is all in sync. That's when the advertising really comes to life, right?
Yeah.
So,
The consistency and building that
yes,
up. Mm-hmm.
right.
Absolutely. What trends do you see shaping the future of billboard advertising?
So, believe it or not, programmatic advertising is available on billboards. It's also in place space, and we can programmatically deliver campaigns. That I think is going to start to get real popular with even the more local advertisers, just because it has that feel of being really strategic and targeting really specific folks. So I think that that's going to become much more laser focused, and some of the targeting capabilities, I imagine, will get even bigger. Um, Another thing that we're seeing is people using um, AI to build out like really crazy out of home campaigns. They're
Okay.
not they're not real, but they use them in the social space. So I don't know if you saw, but Revlon did one not too long ago where they made the train appear to have eyelashes, and there was like a mascara brush where the eyelashes, these huge eyelashes, were getting lifted with the mascara brush. Well, it wasn't real, but
Right.
it was a really cool reel to watch on social media, though, and people were like, wow, that's cool.
Aging, yeah.
Yeah, so I think those kinds of, I mean, we're going to see a lot more of that kind of AI influence and the digital capabilities for targeting audiences that's going to form the next trends for out of home and all of advertising, to be honest.
Gotcha. How do you feel about AI, like in the advertising space?
Well, I think, of course, there are some nuances that are it's in its infancy. So I kind of feel like you have to treat it like a toddler, but it's also um, it's gonna create some pretty cool avenues for us, I think. And there's some things that are really good about what's out there right now as far as ideas or iterations, design. Even I know I work with an AI firm who built out their whole campaign using their AI services, so
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Yeah, there's a lot of possibilities there for it.
Yeah, there still has to be people that are gonna make sure it's relevant and makes it make sense, but I think that is the heavy lift of all that tech that goes into it. I think there's a place for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, with the imagery and just creating that buzzworthy scroll stopping content, definitely,
Yes.
definitely worth it.
Yeah, for sure.
Interesting. All right.
Yeah.
Well, do you want to tell everybody where people can learn more about your work or how to contact you for advice?
Sure. You can always check me out on LinkedIn. I'm at Amy Merithew. It's pretty easy. I don't know that there's too many of us. And you can check out Wilkins Media at wilkinsmedia.com. I am listed there too, so you can check me out there. But do some billboard campaigns, see what they do. It's a really great medium and really low CPM.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, awesome. Well, thank you for coming and talking, and it's been great having you.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Casey.
Thank you.